Life has a strange way of testing people when they are at their weakest, and for Clara, a young single mother working as a receptionist in a bustling corporate office, every day was a battle between responsibility and survival, between motherhood and professionalism, between the need to provide and the fear of losing it all. Her son Ethan, a bright-eyed 6-year-old with endless curiosity and a heart too pure for the cruelty of the world, had been her anchor ever since his father walked away. Before the boy was even born, and Clara had promised herself she would never let her child feel unwanted or unloved, even if it meant she had to sacrifice her own comfort, her sleep, or her dreams. But sometimes promises are hard to keep when the world seems determined to break you, and on that fateful morning when Clara's babysitter canceled last minute, leaving her with no choice but to bring Ethan quietly into her workplace, she prayed no one would notice, she prayed the hours would pass without incident, she prayed her boss, Mr. Reynolds, a stern man who valued punctuality, order, and silence more than compassion, would never find out, but children have a way of reminding us that they cannot be silenced forever, and Ethan, despite Clara's whispered pleas, despite her desperate attempts to keep him occupied with coloring books and snacks, wandered off towards the office floor, his little sneakers squeaking against the polished tiles, drawing curious glances from employees who paused their typing to watch the small boy with messy brown hair and a backpack that seemed too heavy for his tiny shoulders. Clara's heart pounded as she rushed after him, but it was too late. The door to her boss's glass office was already swinging open, and there stood Mr. Reynolds, his eyes narrowing as if she had committed the greatest of betrayals, his voice booming across the office as he demanded an explanation, and though Clara tried to explain through trembling lips that she had no one else to care for her child, that she could not afford to miss work because every paycheck was the difference between rent and eviction, food and hunger, dignity and despair, Mr. Reynolds cut her off coldly, declaring that personal problems were not company problems, that professionalism meant leaving one's life outside the office doors, and before she could plead again, before she could beg for mercy, he uttered the words that would crush her spirit and change her life forever: "You're fired." The sound echoed in her ears like a cruel verdict, and Ethan's innocent eyes widened as if he understood that he had caused his mother's downfall, his small hands clutching hers tightly as if to apologize for simply existing, but Clara held him close, refusing to let him shoulder the weight of blame, telling him softly that everything would be okay even though she had no idea how it possibly could be. Walking out of the building with her box of belongings and her son's hand in hers, she felt the eyes of judgment upon her, whispers following her every step, yet in that moment she resolved that she would not let the cruelty of one man define her destiny. She would rise again, for herself and for Ethan, even if it meant starting from nothing, and though tears blurred her vision as they reached the crowded streets outside, Ethan tugged her sleeve and said, "Mommy, don't cry. I'll take care of you when I grow up." Words so innocent and pure that they reignited a small flame in her heart, reminding her that love, not money, was the truest wealth of all. Weeks passed after Clara's dismissal, and with each day she struggled to stretch her meager savings, taking on odd cleaning jobs, working late into the night while Ethan sat beside her with his homework, sometimes falling asleep at the kitchen table, and though exhaustion weighed on her shoulders, she never let her son see her despair, because to her, failure was not an option, not when Ethan's laughter was her only source of strength. One evening, after scanning countless online listings, Clara stumbled upon a job posting for an assistant position at a newly established company run by a young CEO known for his innovative ideas and compassionate leadership, and though she hesitated, fearful that her past failure would repeat itself, something deep inside urged her to try, to push forward, to believe that not all workplaces would punish her for being a mother, and so with trembling hands she applied, attaching her resume and praying for a miracle. Days later she received an email inviting her to an interview, and though nerves consumed her, she prepared her best outfit, braided Ethan's hair neatly since she had no sitter again, and whispered to him that he would have to sit quietly in the corner just for a little while, promising ice cream afterward if he could behave. As they entered the sleek new office building, Clara's heart raced, memories of her humiliation at her old workplace flooding back, but she pushed them aside, determined to fight for her future, and when the receptionist finally called her name, she rose, holding Ethan's hand tightly, only to realize he was too attached to leave her side, his wide eyes pleading not to be left alone, so she sighed and whispered that he could come in quietly, hoping against hope that it wouldn't ruin everything. As she entered the CEO's office, her breath caught in her throat. Sitting behind the desk was a man in his mid-30s, confident yet warm-eyed, and as he looked up from her resume and noticed Ethan at her side, instead of frowning or scolding, his expression softened, his lips curving into a smile that seemed to hold a secret, and then he said something that made Clara's world stop spinning. "I was that kid." Confused, she stared at him, and he leaned back in his chair, explaining how years ago, his own mother had brought him to work out of desperation, how she had been scolded, ridiculed, nearly Fired for daring to put her child before company rules, but instead of letting it break her, she fought harder, and he grew up watching her sacrifice everything for him, and that was why he built this company differently, with compassion and humanity at its core, because he never wanted another child to feel like a burden for simply existing, and never wanted another mother to be punished for loving too deeply. Tears welled in Clara's eyes as he continued, saying he admired her courage for showing up despite her struggles, that he valued resilience more than perfection, and that he wanted her on his team not just as an employee but as someone who embodied the strength this company stood for, and at that moment Clara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, hope, pure and unshakable, flooding her chest like sunlight after a storm. Ethan, oblivious to the weight of the moment, tugged the CEO's sleeve and asked innocently, "Does this mean Mommy got the job?" And the young man laughed, ruffling his hair gently as he said, "Yes, little man, she did," sealing the promise of a new beginning, not just for Clara's career but for her spirit as well. Walking out of that office with an employment contract in hand, Clara felt lighter than ever, knowing that sometimes life takes everything away only to give you something better, something meant for you, and as she hugged Ethan tightly, she whispered, "See, baby, miracles do happen," her heart swelling with gratitude, resilience, and faith that their future was finally changing for the better.